Okay, this is my second attempt to record this because the first one wound up being an hour and a half and very rambly. I'm going to try and simplify this one and pause when I'm doing nothing but accumulating resources, just explaining pivotal moments. I'm going to try and highlight a few tricks, things that I find are interesting, and may end up save scumming or reloading because I routinely space things. A lot of the work to get the earliest day possible is about micromanagement, about reloading saves that don't go optimally, that sort of thing, and about keeping a lot of things in your mind all at the same time. But our first priorities are to get the efficiency boosts. We have 2 efficiency boosts available to us. This is on a per worker basis. And so once we get the motivation boost, that's a 30% efficiency boost. That's huge. And then when we have the 24-hour shifts plus shift work coordination, that is functionally a 33% efficiency boost per worker as far as what it's contributing on the overall. So we're going to be aiming to do both of those things as soon as possible. The route I'm going to use for that, and I believe the optimal route, is going to be going for Public House and House of Pleasure first. Day 1, of course, is pivotal, so I'm going to go into some detail on this. The way I like to do it is to build 2 gathering posts right here. One is going to be a bit further back so that it only grabs the wood, because wood is the primary need. Now, you could do that for both, right? You could create 2 gathering posts, only focus on wood, but we are going to have some substantial steel needs as well. Given that fact, I prefer this build, where we're going to have a focus on wood, but with some steel income as well. Now, the generator's core circle is not needed. This is true in most scenarios. It can change the movement time of your people, but not by a significant enough margin that it really changes things. So deleting that gives us some extra wood. That wood is important for the sake of having our core stuff built as soon as possible. Going to extend the road past these guys. The specific reason why we want at least a little bit of road on each side is so we can place the buildings there without having to build fresh roads. When you build fresh roads, it over prioritizes them. That is, it'll kick people out of building the buildings to build the roads first, even if you have enough workers that you could theoretically have the building built and all the roads made in the meantime with the leftover workers. The game's calculations do not take that into account. So you want to pre-build roads where possible. I've assigned all the workers, but we don't really need all of the workers assigned for the core stuff. This is just to get a small handful of additional resources while we're waiting for these buildings to be built post 8 a.m. The initial tasks, of course, are all just about filling out these guys. Now, for those of you familiar with the scenario, you know that docks are the vital first resource because a lot of other stuff, including significantly the telegraph station, depends on them. Now that we have our engineers assigned, we can build our 3rd outpost for our workers. That is our 3rd workshop. The reason we don't want to do it until this moment is otherwise you can easily diminish the productivity of your first 2 workshops by accidentally having some of them assigned to the building of this one. Since they will be free workers before assigned, the game's likely to prioritize them because they're a little bit closer in some cases than your alternative workers. So waiting until that's done, and then unassigning the additional 5. So we're going to get that full 10 here. Now our next step is, I think, one of the more interesting. A lot of people don't think about the details of it, but you do have to wait for the animations of the little people, the specific people assigned, to walk into the building to build it. So what we're going to do, I may have actually been a little bit late on this, is build a workshop. Oh, we'll actually reverse that because I want to say where they pop out of the entrance, as close as possible to the planned dock entrance. Having unassigned 10 people, from the nearest possible spaces should send them walking over here. Now, the reason we're doing this isn't because we want the gathering post, it's because we want them to walk into the docks as soon as possible once the docks are ready to be built. By sending them over here, we can then cancel this and create the docks. Make sure you remember to assign the sawmill next. Missing that, and that does break things quite a bit. But you see here is our workers who are at the gathering post. They will now head straight over there, saving us significant time on getting these docks built. As far as ideal placement, I'm not sure if I got it optimal. I've tried it on both sides, but either way should theoretically work. We also have 5 workers that are now freed up. Reassigning them can do some good, although it will prioritize closer people. So I believe if I do this, actually, yeah, these are the free workers. It doesn't matter, though, because they're pre-assigned. So you see that that building started notably faster. This is key because we need to get these guys prior to about 1740, I've found, in order to get them to actually give at least 1% efficiency here, which is the cue for this trigger, the telegraph station. Telegraph station starts accruing towards its resource limit once you schedule it to be built. I believe you can pause it, though I haven't experimented much with that. We're actually going to hold off on ordering many people from it because there is a trick we can use to get our motivation boost earlier. But it and the pub are going to be our next major priorities on building. And once we get to the end of work time, we'll do some deconstruction and reconstruction of things. Reallocating for the sake of getting the fanciest, funnest possible thing. As far as events, I'm not going to go into those in detail. If you can avoid raising discontent or you can raise motivation, these are good ideas. That's about knowing the individual events, really. So it's not going to be a significant set of things. I'm going to show you how I'm building my specific resource gathering. The main goal, though, is 3 sawmills. There we go. I like spreading them out in a way that thought you weren't connected. That kind of accounts for not whittling through individual bits of forest. In my most recent speed run, that was an issue that I created. So I had to over micro my sawmills because they were positioned in a way that ran through a lot of resources very quickly. Once this is deconstructed, we'll build a gathering post right here. That way we can get on this steel pile as well. This guy is not needed. If you were to do this but run a little short on wood, you can actually deconstruct the docks and then reconstruct them later. It's not going to be a big deal. Now our goal here is to wait until we have 30 workers to come. I'll explain that more in a little bit, but basically you can get an additional motivation boost on day 2 if you have 100% of your houses built for residents prior to the time when everyone's going to sleep. That's my understanding of it. Now, to do that, it's a little useful to delay these guys so they don't interfere, though you could account for that otherwise. The other thing is that every house worker in the initial days, at least on easy mode, gives you some additional motivation. That additional motivation boost will push us over the edge, and it will push us over the edge in a lasting way if we postpone the initial batch of workers until we have 30. I'm going to skip ahead until we reach the next day. I've just assigned the next law, House of Pleasure, for the additional motivation boost. Now, the reason why I'm tuning back in now is I want to show you one thing that we can do, a save scummy thing we can do, because we're going to get at about 4 a.m. some sick. Now, I don't want to take care of my sick. I want to send them away. So what I'm going to be doing is making sure I don't have any engineers. Here we have one of our guys who's sick being an engineer. So we're just going to reload. This is randomized. Again, we have an engineer. Since we're looking at about, 1/6, 1/7 of our population being engineers, it's hardly surprising that this would happen a fair portion of the time. All right, this guy's not an engineer. Guy number 2, not an engineer. Guy number 3, not an engineer. I'll show you why that matters in a little bit when I break it down in detail. We just want to make sure we have no engineers, and then commit to the maximum promise for providing shelter. Past that, I've just distributed workers off of just gathering from piles by and large and toward gathering from sawmills. Then we have some people assigned to steam cores so that as we're ready to start building the reloading stations, we have the option there. Doesn't matter which order you get profiles and forgers quarters, they're going to basically go off at the same time based on what we're up to here. Now, to ensure that by about midnight, which I believe to be roughly the cutoff, we have all of our houses built, I'm going to start people on that right now. We need the first 9 built by the time everyone here is going to sleep. You can see with the 3 sawmills, we're gathering very quickly, so we have plenty of resources for this. Now that we have these 4 things, we can skip faster gathering, not really a necessity, and move on to the next tier of research. I'm going to show you an additional thing here momentarily. But basically, we're just waiting for people to be done with work so they can go assist with the builds. I go for reloading station first because the easiest bottleneck to run into is with steel, especially in the early game research, but also later game as well. Now, people are off work now, so they're prioritizing building all these buildings. But we might find that some of them are from a bit further away, and we could also find, theoretically, that we don't have enough workers to tackle everything simultaneously. If we wanted to reassign workers from a building that is under construction, we want it to be a lower priority, the easiest way to do that is just to pause and unpause. That will pop the workers off it. Any of them that can or need to be reassigned to something else will be reassigned, and then it will progress. Another thing you'll find is that, for example, these guys, they're almost done. And the house right next to them, its workers are, in many cases, quite far away. Let me see if I can find one. There you are. So he's over here, coming over to right here. By the time he could get there, this building and its workers will be done. So what we could do, if we wanted to speed this up, is again pause to unassign workers, then resume to reassign the closest available workers. Now you'll see they just hop over next door. Notably increases the build speed. This looks like it should be okay for the needed motivation boost. Oof, this might be close. Okay. Yes, if you see this just a hair underneath, that's where we want it. Now, as noted, I need to reload sometimes because I space things. I forgot to get this at 30. Let's not delay that. I'm going to reload. I'll come back to you once I've caught up to the same moment. Okay, we're back. I still didn't get perfect timing on getting the workers, but I got it within about an hour of the optimal time to get them over, and it will still demonstrate the needed idea. Now, once we build these houses and have this motivation boost, that's the key reason we're doing this. But we want to make sure that the second the additional 30 people get here, they also have that additional motivation boost, and that only happens once they have housing. So we're going to build 3 additional things there. As for our 3 sick workers, now's the time to start working on them. 2 of them happen to be part of our unemployed. That's convenient. Need to find the 3rd, who's on the steam cores. We're going to dismiss him and assign him to the profiles manufacturer. Now, assigning to the profiles manufacturer isn't vital, but it is useful for our purposes in this case, because it's going to simplify a little bit of the assignment for the scouting expedition here in just a second. You could, in a world where you wanted to get rid of your 6 sooner, send off your scouting expedition sooner, or do multiple scouting expeditions to get rid of your 6 multiple times. But we are going to wait for the profile manufacturer's event, which automatically triggers about 5 additional 6. And since we're close to that fairly high crunch time, I'm going to focus on over here. Now, the labor laws, which are vital to us, again, we want that shift work coordination as soon as possible. Those are going to open up on an event that happens when you've created 3 structural profiles. So that's our next priority. For quality of life, just for myself, I'm going to get exactly 15 people there. I simplify something a little bit down the line. Here's that event I was mentioning. Saying that you improve safety is important just to avoid dropping your motivation, which would break some of our numbers. Once you've done that, though, and we see that all of our sick are from this group, what we can do is unassign these 15 because they're the only 15 available. They're guaranteed to be the 15 who become the foragers. So then when you send them off, they will be sick people leaving your town. You can confirm you've done this correctly by checking out the sick menu, and it's going to say going on an expedition. Now, if you disband your expedition later, these people are still going to be sick. However, they will not burden your healthcare system here, giving you some more time to focus on research. Now, you can micro this for as long as you'd like, because sickness is not guaranteed at this stage, but it does require a fair amount of saves coming. What I'm doing is simply postponing the time when we need to build a medical post and man it. Once we have our next law, we can start doing 24-hour shifts. That gives us some immediate benefits when it comes to research, but more importantly, again, opens up that shift work coordination. I'm going to see if I can do anything to get those 2 steel a little bit faster, because all my people are off doing the wrong thing. I only need 2. We're going to pause this and pause this so that these guys actually work on this. I'm just going to wait until I have, there we go, the 2 steel, allowing me to focus on my next research. In this case, I'm going to do forager carts. Again, what I'm going to do is the same sort of trick where we're unpausing this to get the workers sent over there. Right now, you see we do have 20 free workers, so all 20 are going to go start building there. That's highly valuable for us. Oh, not extended. Come on, buddy. 2 shifts. Only done this many dozens of times. I think I'd be a little bit more consistent. Now, there's no need to shift it to 24-hour shifts right now, but we will want to do that overnight. Now, right now, with the 30 people arriving and already having housing, you'll see that the motivation does boost us to that 30% morale boost. Now, this is calculated out for easy mode. You need to do a different build order, different structure for the earliest possible time for the motivation boost for a different mode. The consistent one is day 4 where you have the option when explaining the situation in the world to give the only fools doubt it boost to motivation. And that's the most consistent way to get it done without having to stress about it. But this gives us, about 12 hours of productive time now, plus the morning tomorrow morning. Basically, we get a full extra day of the 30% boost. And yes, we haven't gotten the notification that we have the 30% boost, but if you check here, yeah, you can see that 30% boost is in effect. For a second, it's just going to be about microing workers, so I'm going to spare you that. I'll skip forward to the next thing that I think is interesting. Okay, end of work shift. I'm going to show you just we're switching everything to 24 hours. We're fully manning one of these. Now, if you wanted, and you are worried like I often am, that you're going to forget to reassign, you could do this. I'll go ahead and do that for now. But yeah, both the 10 and 5. And then what we're going to want to do is really just push through on getting everything else gathered up wherever possible. By working overnight, you're getting an additional shift at half power. That's a big deal, right? It's going to be a very easy thing to see how and why that's of benefit. The next research we've been doing is the sawmill upgrade. It's easy. It simplifies the sawmills. It decreases the length of time we have to worry about that, and it unlocks sawmill range, which I kind of view as a quality of life research component to do, because it prevents having to micromanage quite so much. The biggest benefit right now, though, really is this research, having it go overnight. Having half of your workers working overnight is a lot more effective on research than double the workers working for half the time. I'm going to show you one quick thing. So let's say you want to micromanage out your sick. Sickness is not guaranteed. If you were to have a save before midnight, reloading that save would refresh your sick. Here we see Mark Stoughton getting sick, 1:40 a.m. If I reload the autosave, based on my experience, at 1:40 a.m., he ought to get sick again. Mark Stoughton. Doesn't matter how many times you reload that. But if you have one even shortly before midnight, you should have a reroll on the sick. Fred Moore is now the sick guy. And if you do this enough, you will avoid having any sick. That guy got sick real early. Again, you need to do this before midnight. It looks like this sick lock-in, the overnight sick, lock in at the same time as the autosave. So it's unavoidable if you fail to save beforehand. But if you do save beforehand, you can save scum it. And what we're doing on research is just pushing hard to get the upgrades. This is going to allow us to skip ahead to the boosted forager carts, which saves us time over the course of the full expedition. And we have components of our expedition that will be waiting on that. Other thing that I've built right here is these gathering posts. We're going to rely entirely on the stockpiled coal here. Now, I've been noting that overnight, I'm still getting one sick pretty consistently at some point. I believe you can save scum your way out of that. We're just going to show you what I do to avoid having to worry about that. There's a whole very generous approach when it comes to your sick and how long they can be sick before they become gravely ill and so on. In easy mode, this obviously becomes brutal as you scale the difficulties, especially as you get to Survivor. But really, I'm just going to be building this. I'm pulling 2 of my researchers off, and they'll just be the long-term stuff. Here we have our explorers. You can set up camp. They'll send out the raw food and then allow us to progress. You don't need to stay. As soon as the stuff is sent off, you can move forward. Now, you can also get a fresh batch of people sent off. Once these guys have arrived home, if you rebuild the camp, I don't know the exact details of that exploit because it's really worth it, but there are options there. This building the camp also gives us the option to start the shaft structure, but we won't be doing that for quite some time. Here in the morning, we get shift work coordination, which again, functionally, 33% productivity boost across the board. And as you can see, we've gotten our resource production up well enough that even these very expensive research components are going to be no big deal. Now, one minor note, if you ever have a sick person who's just refusing to actually do what they're supposed to, in most cases, you can go and actively dismiss them from their job to force them to go get care. You can then even reassign them, and they will stay in care as they were supposed to. Here's the event where you have the option to get the morale boost in many different configurations. This is usually the moment where you're going to get the additional 30% boost if you're optimizing for it. Right now, of course, we've given ourselves the option to not have to go for the one that raises discontent because we already have that boost. I'll skip ahead to the next thing that seems interesting. Okay, here we are in day 5. A couple things I want to show you. First of all, just building out things, getting some resource depots. Now, you don't have to do resource depots if you're on top of other things enough. You can, for example, just allocate your wood via structural profiles. And if you have structural profiles plus machine shop plus a foundry, you can allocate everything that you need to allocate. However, it's a headache. And in this case, there are benefits to delaying the machine shop so that we can use that steam core for something else and so that we can postpone that research. So what we're doing in research, having gotten the boosted forager current, is then focusing on all of the resource gathering stuff that we want. Steam sawmill is one that I keep going back and forth on whether it's worthwhile because you absolutely don't need it. It saves you some workers eventually, but it is also, 50%-ish boost for a lot of steel, delays there. It means that you're deprioritizing the already built one, so your mileage may vary. It can go either way. On laws, we just fulfilled our promise by doing a safety procedures, which we're going to want to use anyway. Now, you'll notice that people are getting hungry, and this is impacting our discontent. There are multiple ways that you can go about solving this. The funny thing is, and I honestly think it's hilarious, in easy mode, you can finish the generator before you ever feed your people. They can just survive off of the raw food plus the bit of rations that are brought home by your scouts. So you don't need to ever build the cookhouse. You can literally ignore it. However, it does impact your discontent. So there's at least an argument to be made for doing it. The argument against building the cookhouse is that people will sometimes not attend their shifts because they're eating. Now, that's not a long-term problem because they'll just do it off their shifts once they've gotten into the appropriate rhythm. But you can address that issue if you need to in a way that I'll show you here in just a bit. Now we're going to go to the storehouse. Two places we want to get to with our foragers are the storehouse and Krev Nej, both of which have valuable resources for us. I'll skip ahead to the next interesting thing. Worth noting, we've just consistently been getting workers whenever possible. That's why we are at 130 workers right now. We're going to do that for the bulk of the game. We're going to go for the route that gives us the perfect generator, ideally on day 13. We'll see if that works out. And workers will eventually change to being a priority of engineers, but that's going to be very deep into things. Okay, I have arrived here at the storehouse. The thing to be aware of, probably most of you have done this, know this, you have a chance of dying here. So make a safety save, reload it as needs be. Then once we have those two steam cores, the equivalent of, if you were to spend those on workers, you get 20 workers, right? So you can think of it as being roughly that valuable of a resource. And we can prioritize that and then getting the 2 additional steam cores from Krev Nej. So that's the goal of these foragers right now. Now, I'm building the second profiles manufacturer, and we're going to suddenly get a huge uptick of wood. You'll see here momentarily. Where all of the wood that we'd stored via banking these structural profiles has been refunded to us. So we're just going to reallocate these. Now, the goal in this particular case is to get 94, based on how I've routed this out, 94 structural profiles. You are going to want 104 total, but you get 10 with the engineers, and we want the engineers anyway. So the goal is to have all of my people focused on getting that wood gathered until we have enough for all of the structural profiles. Then no one needs to be on wood anymore. And that's largely going to be our pivot moment over to building the generator. Now you can see I've built the food rations out, maxed out our storage there. And we have, 3-ish days of people eating these. Now, if we wanted to prevent people from eating these as often, if we wanted to prevent productivity loss, let me see if I can find at least one person who should be working but is eating. You'll find this if you have people who've been hungry. It might be that everyone's kind of already eaten off their shift. So I can't demonstrate it actively, but if you had someone who was eating when they should be working, you can do this. Dismantle, pause. No one can go here now. So they're not going to be focused on eating when they should be working. Simple trick. You can do it that way if you'd like. And it can bump your productivity at vital moments if you needed to. All right. We got those optimized materials. So with that done, and with all of the resource gathering stuff here, skip the steam sawmill this time. Now it's time to start preparing for the arrival of our expedition by getting ready to have machine shops built. Oh, although I should note, the other thing I could get, which kind of refunds us 10-ish workers, is the upgraded docks, which is probably a worthwhile thing to do. Come to think of it, we'll reverse the order here. That way we can have a space for an additional steam reloading station on arrival, and we should be good from that point. Okay, just got to Krevnej, so we got the 5 composites plus 2 additional steam cores. What I'm going to do is go back via the hunting grounds. So if I go all the way back to the construction site, it's 14 hours. Hunting grounds is, I believe, 9 plus 6. So it takes us 1 extra hour, and we get 80 raw food out of it. So it feels like a worthwhile deal. What I've been doing on laws, by the way, is just opening up overcrowding. I go back and forth on whether sustained treatment and care house or one of these various other configurations is better. I don't have a strong opinion. It's nice to have overcrowding for later on, should you choose to use healthcare. But there's actually, well, you'll see, but we're going to ignore our sick a lot down the line. Then I'm building some additional resource depots as well. And here we have the upgraded docks. We have the slot for things, but we don't really have any of the resources. So this is part of why we have these profile manufacturers ready to go, so we can assign people to them as desired. Okay, so we have our people back now. They've delivered us quite a bit of stuff, and they made that pit stop to send an additional group of people with food. So what I'm doing at this stage is starting to make use of those steam cores. And again, multiple ways that you could go about this. What I'm going to do is focus on prioritizing getting a bunch of steel and then deconstructing as needed. But I'm also going to build a machine shop so I can start banking some of that steel. So that's where my current steam cores are going. You could do it a lot of different ways without too much difficulty. And so long as you're remaining active and you make sure you account for the fact that steel is a likely bottleneck if you don't plan around it down the line, you should have a lot of good options. Oh, I forgot to mention, these guys are going to go hunting for the lost crates. Now, I actually checked the map beforehand to make sure that the lost crates were in an optimal position, because that will make or break when you're able to do specific things within the routing that I have. But they're going to be looking for those lost crates, and they need to get them back in time for them to be used in the final stages of the project. Although, of course, the research, which we're going to be doing in this case, also requires those things. And once you have all the laws that you need, I really only care about overcrowding, then you can wait on the last one for the sake of busting a strike. I've wondered about bare knuckle bouts as well. Maybe I should do that, but a day and 12 hours, that's a bit too long. We'll skip it. We're going to be focusing on the generator pretty soon here anyhow. Okay, I am recording this a little bit later from what I was recording before, so apologies if this is at all disjointed, but I'm going to do something weird. I was experimenting with the exact timing on creating the shaft generator and how it works with the toxic levels. And from what I can tell, there are a lot of contributing factors, some of which are not entirely clear for when and how toxicity levels change. The significant initial thing, though, and the thing to be aware of up front, is that you'll get your change at 25% during the shaft structure generator. And then 24 hours later, the toxic gas levels will get worse again. And then not the following day, but the day after, at 7 a.m., usually I think, the toxicity levels will drop. So the idea here is to push this specifically with the idea of just getting this triggered on day 7, because this will mean that it's going to be day 10 that the toxicity levels drop. I've done my math right. I might not have. And the alternative would be to try and start it even earlier. That's what I was playing around with, because there's definitely a degree to which that's desirable for some of the outcomes here. But day 10 will mean that the final 2 stages of the generator should be in that lower toxicity level. And by then, of course, we have the opportunity as well to have resources allocated, ventilation plants and so on at the ready. So we're going to see that 25% here. That's going to trigger the toxic gas. I believe as long as it's done before midnight, at least with the few sparse tests I've done so far, that's sufficient to trigger the gas. Now, you can wait this out so long as it's before midnight and slightly reduce how much your workers are exposed. There we go. We see that lower toxicity level as soon as we click on the notification. This means that at 19:14 on day 8, we'll see that get worse. Then on day 9, nothing will happen. It will remain at that level. And day 10, I believe 7 or 8 a.m., it's going to drop back down to the current levels, which are manageable. What we're going to do right now is boost this along, partially so we can get our laws moving forward. So that will mean we do protective structures, boost it forward, and then safety procedures to get it to unhealthy. You can wait till right at 69%. Unhealthy is the minimum, though, for sending the rescue team the best outcome for the perfect generator. And as soon as that's happened, you no longer need the safety procedures, so you can get back your efficiency on that. We'll see then at 77%, people are going to go on strike. When they do, pause the game with the book of laws at the ready. Negotiate and offer them something That's available in the Book of Laws. Hearty meals is the easiest. You don't have to build anything extra. Before unpausing, go in, assign the hearty meals, and that's going to allow you to have your law assignment exhausted. And then a split second later, the engineers versus workers thing will pop up. And that automatically resets your cooldown. So you basically get a free law assignment or a free diffusing of the strike, if you prefer to think of it that way. We'll want to build the factory inspectorate, of course, but it's mostly going to be important as we actually get back into building, which won't be for a second. And then, of course, because I pulled everything off of their shifts to do this, my workflow, of course, is in trouble, but as long as that's a temporary matter, should be fine. Oh, and how long has it been since I heard these guys? All right, I'm falling a little behind there, but that's okay. Once we get to 100%, it also is going to help with getting additional engineers and those last structural profiles, because in a couple hours, we're going to get that notification that unlocks those map locations. Top priority, though, of course, is getting all this stuff rolling back in. And because for the next stage of the generator, we will want the tower pumps, which is steam exchangers, we can start working toward that a little more aggressively. And then here's this notification. Abandoned site. It's going to be very close over here. Once I get the lost crates, I can go to the nature sculpture and pick up the scientists. As for the factory inspectorate, we don't want to trigger one of its abilities just yet. We specifically want to avoid triggering the 10% efficiency bonus until we can make better use of it. So assign and unassign to get the promise taken care of. Fast forward to the next moment where something interesting is happening. Okay, got a few things happening at once, so I figure I'll show them. Thing one, the reason I built the upgraded docks is specifically for this, we'll call it a trick. We're going to deconstruct the steam reloader and then build it on the other pile. So fairly simple, but it means that we can then free up these dock workers for at least the next little bit. We also have Site 107. Definitely want to take the engineers to the camp. They've got some good stuff for us. So between our lost crate theft, which is pretty close on the map over here, right? But, lost crates, nature sculpture, field kitchen, Site 107. It's going to be fairly straightforward. Now, ideally, I think we want to push forward deconstruction so that we can get the 50 additional workers. That's going to be experimental for me. I normally don't do that. But I'm seeing a potential way to make it work, so we're going to try that out today. That is also the last research we need of the main stuff. Some of these are totally optional. Safety improvements you don't really need. The Venticle post upgrade you don't really need. Yada, yada, yada. But you do need automatic prototyping. Even though you don't need any of the research stuff from it, you'll want to pick it up because it is required for the research that we do after building the main generator. So we're just pumping everything further and further and further. We'll need a whole lot of these for the post game, but so long as you keep people working on it, that's the main thing in question. I'll start the generator shortly. I'll show you once I've gotten the micro done and that set up. Okay, I think I'm more or less ready to get started. Use protective structures, use the safety procedures, and then wherever you pull them from, get your workers on here and supercharge. This is just for my own convenience. I do this because producing the safety equipment is going to be of value. The other case for using the supercharge is to wait until you're within range of the what am I talking about? Of the actual event itself. This is also an event that I always forget exactly when it happens. It might even be variable. I want to say it can happen fairly early, so it's possible I'll be reloading. Going to disband my foragers, because why not? And then we have the additional items for the foundry. Foundry is going to take priority here because we need to have 25 steel composites for the next phase. So we want to make sure we get those additional 10 running as soon as possible. One second, I'm going to pause and calculate how many things I need. Okay, so this should get us done with steam exchangers. Probably means I got a little bit ahead of myself there, but that's fine. And then we'll want to make sure we dump the rest of the steel into the foundry until we're good there, and then we can pull people off of other things once we've hit that appropriate threshold. Here I'm just waiting to be proven wrong here. I'll even safety save for it. Because I want to say that this one has a variable time and that if you're safe enough, it doesn't go off at 30%, it goes off at something like 50% for the event, but I'm really not confident on that. And here we can get overseers. Overseers and internal promotion are both potentially useful, but we can delay and make it work from here. I'm never sure when to pivot to ordering engineers. I'm going to go for one more order of workers, but who knows? The hope here, for me, is to hit the decrease in toxicity level right about the time the event goes off. Which means avoiding having to build an additional ventilator, which means being able to continue to keep up maximum steel production. Obviously, very useful. There we go. Okay, I think that'll work. Because I'm never sure of the timing, I'm just going to let it play out. But I want to say it goes to 55% if you're safer approaching it. Okay, 56. We're not quite there on the wood. Going to calculate that. 1 second. Okay, 18 should be what we need. Does also mean our last little vestiges of sawmilling can be taken care of, and we can do all sorts of stuff with those guys. And I am partially just awaiting the moment when I have enough steel. But I'm fairly confident I at least have enough to move away from that set. One second, calculating. Okay, need another 8 on the steel composite, which won't be difficult at all. We're even to the point where we can start to move things off, but the thing holding us up at the moment is actually coal, so we'll redistribute for that. Just until, again, we hit those benches. Adding in those 5 here just because I want to use them on pressure valves, and that's not calced into things currently. I may not use them on the pressure valves, but we should be okay too. Okay, there we go. Done in 11 hours, done in 13, so let's move some people onto that. Done in 10, done in 11. Ideally, we would just want it, matched up where possible. And then here's where we get the engineer bonus, brings everything up. I'll fast forward to the next stage of the generator because this should all just play out fairly easy. Okay, we've just finished the next stage of the generator. Now, it's plausible that I can get this thing to the point of cooking, get the event to happen in time for us to avoid the increase in toxicity level, but I'm honestly not sure. So we might need that second ventilator. We will add it just in case we do. We're not going to leave those ventilators on, by the by. But we do want them set to 24 hours because I've had that happen a bunch of different times where things go poorly for that exact reason. And while we're here, we're going to send people off to pick up 50 workers who will cause problems and be sick, who we can still make use of. We do not need the dampers so long as we get the maximum safety for the event itself. All right, we're going to try this. I'm not sure exact timing. So I'm going to do this, and we're going to see. I'm going to reload the autosave if that gets close but doesn't work. Is it 55? Oh, also, maybe it's not going up today. Maybe it's going up tomorrow. Well, easy. All right. Emergency safety systems. But I'm actually going to load the auto there. I'll get you back to us when we're right here, because that just can be improved. Okay, here's back at the anticipated moment. I've just reallocated workers to make that more efficient and effective. We're going to wait until this moment. Supercharge. There we go. Use emergency safety systems. We should be good. Then I'm going to bring these workers back to our camp. That might break the entire run because I've never done that before, but I think I can make use of them. Allows me to pivot to the engineers earlier, so we've got some of those on the way already. And then we've got these two separate things. We may use steam exchangers on the second one of these, but the idea is to just kind of do them in sequence. So we're ready on this as well. as usual, we want to have it as aligned as possible as far as timing is concerned, because it will save us a slight amount of time. We are going to bump that. We have the 20 composites and the 70 exchangers here, which is precisely what we want. Or the 50 exchangers, but 60 after the boost to the 2 items in the final stage. The additional amount is just going to be helpful in starting to get the further research started past that point. So there's the 50. Oh, forgot to pre-make any beds for them. So here's beds for everyone. There's technically some steel and some other stuff that my scouts can access now, but it's really not all that important. What we're going to do instead... Well, first of all, I guess I'll do that for some reason. What we're going to do instead is actually prevent people from healing on purpose. This is where it might go wrong, because I don't know how far along in the sickness pattern people are at this stage. By people are, I mean how far along those 50 workers are. But you get a surprising amount of leeway in getting them pushed forward. All right, so 24, 45. That should get us to the final stage there. 23 might not get us to the final stage there because we need 95. Nope, that's the 95. That's what we need. This means that all these guys are also good to be pulled off once we have the steam cores functioning there. This also means that we can build additional machine shops and an additional foundry, allowing us to get those items produced a little bit faster. Oh, that's already a machine shop. Here's the foundry. We're just going to split the load of work. This is something that I could have optimized better. Got a couple of gravely injured. We're going to see if we can take care of just them. Let's see. Oh, that's right. I knew they were critically ill, didn't I? All right, I'm going to fiddle with this. I'll update you once I'm there. Okay, figured it out. Got my grievously ill into this one spot. I definitely could have spread out my workers a little bit better, gotten generator stuff done a little bit earlier, because the fact that all this is getting produced effectively at this stage is an indicator that I could have done some of that during the research stage for my engineers. 15 isn't the right amount, so I must have done something quite wrong here. Might need to reallocate stuff. 1 second. Okay. So, just pushing through. I think I've reallocated everything correctly, but who knows? We'll find out soon. We'll get day 12 on the generator, which likely means it won't be till day 14 that we get all the research done. And so it goes. And 25. Good. It should have us golden there. We even got an extra. I believe that should be everything good on that front. Yeah, this is definitely not exactly optimal on the initial generator creator, but there is some natural churn pushback when it comes to the generator being completed perfect versus non, because you do need to just kind of optimize slightly toward what you're actually doing. This is, I think, the scripted strike event, which I think I can't avoid at this stage. There's the generator, and yes, we stay. This allows us to immediately pivot into these 3 research tasks, of course. Let me see if these guys still have the gravely injured. They do not. So I think I can safely reassign them without a risk of death. We can also safely reassign all 10 of these guys, which means that I did not make quite enough tech posts. I'm going to get 3 of those set out. And just because I'm paranoid, we're going to double check. Yes, 45 and 15 is what we need. Good. Internal promotion's almost ready. There we go. And I doubt my next shipment of engineers will arrive in time for it to do anything. It's looking like this one will not be a new personal best. It's likely to be early day 14 instead of late day 13. But I do feel it still demonstrates all the principles at play. the optimization there would be to start the generator a little bit earlier, because you don't need all of this stuff to be ready before you start all 3 research things. You can have multiple of these guys running, getting your final stuff ready. So I didn't align those perfectly, which is a large portion of the reason for the delay here, and why we're going to push early into day 14. And then I'm just going to lie to my people, say I'm going to do a bunch of stuff that I won't do, because we're about to win. All right, not a perfect run, but hopefully a reasonably good demonstration of the idea. Being day 14 there, I think you can see the areas for improvement that make day 13 possible. I did do a day 13 run at one point, which looked very much the same, except that I'd started my generator a little bit earlier, dedicated more people on the generator, and then pivoted my workers to produce everything during the research stage. Not everything. They had a lot prepared in advance, but a portion of it was prepared during the research stage. All right. There we go. Nothing too fancy. I'll let you watch this final crawl, because why not? This is already over an hour.